Alrighty, we'll go ahead and get started. So it is with great pleasure to introduce Jessie Barnes into our Career Roundtable session today. Jessie actually graduated with an MFA in printmaking in 2017, and she is going to present her career pathway and what led her to work for Anthropologie as a window display artist using mostly upcycled materials. And I did want to read Jessie's bio just to kind of give you a backstory on her and her education and her background. So, Jessie is a multimedia artist living and working in Dallas, Texas. She was born in Jacksonville, Florida, and pursued visual art throughout her grade school. In 2013, Barnes graduated from the University of North Florida with a BFA in painting and drawing and printmaking. She then moved to Texas and earned her MFA in printmaking from the University of North Texas in 2017. And since then, Jessie has led printmaking workshops, demonstrations, taught art courses, exhibited her work, was an artist in residency at Tarrant County Community College, has been a visiting artist at printmaking programs in Kentucky and Tennessee, and continues to make work at her home studio. She is currently working as a display artist for Anthropologie at North Park Center. Okay, and Jessie is actually on the site at North Park Center right now.
Oh man, I didn't realize that.
so, so let me move on to the next slide. I have people coming into the session. Give me 1 second. And also to give you a little bit of background about our Career Roundtable sessions. The Career Roundtable is a forum for students to discuss and discover career opportunities in visual arts, design, museum studies, art education, art history, and other fields that may or may not relate to art and design. The Career Roundtable will provide first-year students and beyond an opportunity to prepare for career possibilities and connect with mentors. And so in each of these sessions, we try to invite as many employers, faculty, artists who are working in their area to give students some ideas about what they could do in the future. And so we do offer drop-in hours at the Career Center, just to give you a little bit of a background in what I do and what the Career Center does. We offer drop-in hours for students who may need a resume review, cover letter review, or to have, if you have questions about job searching, interviews, and a lot more. And I do have my information on, let me go back to that slide. I do have my email information listed here. So if you do have any questions about any of the presenters or, any resume reviews or anything like that, you can always reach out to me. And I can schedule an appointment for you if you would like to discuss careers related to arts and design. And I also want to introduce myself. My name is Marcy Bishop Lilly. I'm the career coach for CVAD and the College of Music. So moving on, these are just some of the services that we do offer at the Career Center. But, our roundtable sessions are just an example of some of the other things that we do here on campus. We do have a WIC session coming up on November the 12th, which is on a Friday, just like our session today from 11 to 12:30. And we'll be talking with Joelle from Wix.com and how to create your very own website or portfolio. And we do think it is super important for students to work on their professional online presence. And so Joelle will be coming into that session to speak with students and give a guided one-on-one session. And she will also provide a coupon code for a free year website upgrade. So if you need a domain, if you need a website, with some extra features, she will provide a coupon code in that session. So if you are still, getting your website up and running or building that, and she can kind of help with some of those components. So we are going to welcome Joelle in our next Career Roundtable session. And I do have a little QR code. So if you scan that, you should be sent to Handshake to be able to register and find out more information on that. So, scan that with your phone. If you're interested, that will be again on November the 12th. Another upcoming event from the Career Center will be the All Majors Career Fair. This will be next Wednesday, so next week from 1 to 4 in the Union, so it will be face-to-face. We do have virtual options. I believe the virtual All Majors Career Fair may be on Thursday, but if you scan that QR code, that you will be sent to Handshake, and you'll be able to see all of the career fair events. But if you do plan on going to the in-person All Majors Career Fair, please make sure that you are dressed business attire, bring copies of your resume to speak to employers, because there will be employers there who are possibly recruiting. And so, yes, bring your resume. And if you are seeking an internship or any kind of full-time opportunities, please come out. We'd love to see you. So without further ado, Jesse, again, just, let me know whenever you would like me to switch through the slides, but the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, Marcy. And hello, everyone. Welcome to this wonderful thing that Marcy and Vinod put together. You guys are doing such important work, and I think transparency about jobs outside of school is something that a lot of programs are missing. So I'm really pleased to be part of this today. So thank you so much for having me. And for the introduction, I think I'm going to hire you for my personal representative at all times. So get ready. But yes, thank you everybody for coming today. My name is Jessie Barnes. I've been with Anthropology now for about 4 years. And during that time, I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned a lot about art and career options that I never considered before. So I'm excited to share things with you today, and we'll have a question and answer session, I believe, after I'm done. So Marcy sent me some bullet points, and I'm just going to go over those real quick before we start looking at images. So I've always been an artist. As Marcy said, I have a BFA and an MFA, and before that, I was in magnet public schools, much like Booker T. Washington. And I was really fortunate to be able to discover printmaking at a very young age. It was in high school, actually. And that was a really big game changer for my life. It was challenging and difficult and beautiful, and it had a history that I was really interested in. So that became my area of study then. And at that time, I was working in retail already. I was working at actually a store called Steinmart. I'm not sure if any of you know that store. It's now closed. It's gone out of business, but that was my first job ever. And so I started off in the retail language, which was kind of strange for an artist, but it was, it was a consistent job, and I got to do some merchandising as a high school, college student. So that was my first experience in the actual job world, and I kept that job into college. So I was studying printmaking at UNF in Florida, and I, knew that I wanted to go to graduate school. I knew that I didn't want to go right away. So I ended up taking about a year off between graduate school and undergrad, just to apply and work and think about where I wanted to go. I would highly recommend doing that if any of you are considering moving on to higher education. I think that year was really formative, and it also allowed me to save some money and just work full time, which was great. So highly recommend. But I also started to move into more of an art focused career. So I worked as an intern at my local contemporary art museum in Jacksonville. And from there, I got a personal assistant job with an artist who was in need of someone to help organize his stuff. So I helped him with photo shoots and just emails and gallery stuff. And that was kind of a lucky job that I happened into. It was not anything that I had ever trained for, but it was through my connection at the museum that I got that job. So that held me over until graduate school. And then I was in school from 2014 to 17. And then after graduate school, which was just the best experience, super difficult, super fun. I learned, I think my knowledge about printmaking and about art in general and just myself probably increased tenfold. It was a really enlightening experience. And I met a lot of really amazing friends as well. So it was a good move for me. It's not for everyone, but it was good for me. School, however, was a different story. It's kind of, I prepared myself for this academic career. I thought I was going to go into teaching. I thought that I would stay in the academic circle for a long time. And turns out that wasn't as easy to come by as I was hoping it would be. So not that any of those things should be easy, but it was really tough. And I applied to some teaching jobs and arts administration jobs across the country, sent out a lot of applications. And this is before the pandemic, so we can't use that as an excuse, but the market was flooded and I got really nothing full-time that would help to sustain me as a person who needs to pay bills. So I started looking elsewhere. And that's actually when I found this Anthropologie gig. I really wanted it. It was at the Fort Worth store. We have 6 Anthropologie stores in the DFW Metroplex. So I thought, oh, this is really interesting. Like I found the job on a job board and I thought, oh, why? And I ended up getting an interview, but the company moved somebody else internal into that spot instead. So I was devastated because I knew that this job would be such a great job for me. So I sucked it up and I started applying to lower and lower, like on the totem pole art jobs, until finally I got a job at Crate and Barrel, which was a really great way to get back into the world that isn't necessarily surrounded by artists. So I started working for them as a visual part-time merchandising person. And I was just there working in the back, collecting things that were received to the store, putting them out on the floor, not really making displays, but kind of merchandising product. So that actually prepared me more than I thought for the eventual time when I could start at Anthropologie. And about 6 months later, after I was doing great in a little time, and I was adjuncting at a community college, and I was an artist in residence. About 6 months after all of that had started, Anthropologie called me back and said, hey, we have a position open. Would you like to work for us? And I said, obviously. So I went in and got the job. And 4 years later, I'm still here, which is pretty cool. So a little bit about my job. The official title is called Display Coordinator. And there's one full-time me for every Anthropologie store in the country. And it's a pretty spectacular position for an artist because we make things by hand from scratch all the time, all year round. I do not have to do any floor customer service work. I don't have to be on the register, be in the fitting room. This is my full-time job making art that will be seen by a lot of people. A lot of things that I do for this job are not things that I ever thought I would like or really be good at, but my skill set has grown so much in the 4 years that I've worked for this company. So we do a lot of building furniture from scratch, from purchasing the lumber with our own budget to learning how to build it and learning how to treat it to make it feel elevated. We make collage materials, like as in this window that you're seeing right now. This is all upcycled newspapers and magazines and plastic bags. This was an Earth Day window and it was all about recycled goods. So the birds are cut out wood, but that's pretty much the only thing that was sent to us. And everything else was made from basically garbage, which is kind of cool. So a lot of things are very tedious at this job. I'll be maybe hand sewing something all day. And some days I'll be building for, well, some weeks I'll be building for a week straight. Some weeks are very installation heavy. So It's a lot of being on a ladder, figuring out how to have something not fall out of the ceiling onto a customer's head. But all of that problem solving has really helped, you know, like build my artistic language. And I can take these things and know that I'm going to be good at them at the store and bring them back to my own personal practice, which is pretty cool. So it's a fantastic job. I would highly recommend, if you ever see one opening, send me an email. Marcy has my information. So I'd be happy to, you know, follow you guys on Instagram or whatever, but let me know if there's anything in the area that you're interested in. And that's, it's a really cool job to get into. They don't come around often, but when they do, it's pretty fascinating to apply for them. So speaking of that, getting into some more of like the requirements for this job, there are no specific degree requirements to work in this position. At Anthro, a bachelor's degree is preferred, just like every other job pretty much, but having a master's, I think, helped me like professionally and personally to get a leg up, because the maturity that I gained from graduate school really, I think, allows me to work in this really fast-paced environment where craft is like utmost importance, and deadlines are also important. So that was really helpful in the preparation for working for this job, but nothing is required. You just have to be willing to learn a lot of things. It's helpful if you know how to use power tools. And it's helpful if you have artistic skill like painting, drawing, sculpture. Any of those things are just going to help when you start building things or making three-dimensional animals or whatever it may be. You also have to be just an exceptionally good problem solver. I think a lot of the traits that artists naturally have are perfect for this job. The one thing that is a little difficult, I will say, for a lot of people is that these ideas come from corporate. So our corporate office is in Philadelphia, and they are matching, like they come up with the theme for the season. So for this window, for example, this was our summer, the first summer that COVID was happening during, and we needed a really happy window. So they decided to make these giant fruits and put them in this window and make it just like exploding with happiness and joy. So they prototype all of these designs and send out instructions to every, which is great. And it eliminates a lot of issues that you might run into if it hadn't been done before, like if it was just all you on your own. But the other side of that is that it's not up to you when your window is finished or when any display in the store is finished. It's really up to them. So I think a lot of us, you know, kind of struggle with that learning curve of like, it's a different kind of critical feedback because it's coming from a money standpoint from a corporation. So that's kind of interesting. And if you guys are interested in that, I can definitely talk more about it. But that can be kind of one of the drawbacks of working for any company, is that it's, you know, you are the artist, you are the person that they have hired, but it's not necessarily your idea. So you have to be really flexible and be willing to change things when you need to. And so that's kind of the one thing that's been a learning curve. But in that, I've grown a whole lot as well. So it's been good. Let's see. Internship or job shadow opportunities. COVID, as you can imagine, hit retail pretty hard. So we don't offer in-store internships anymore, but our home office partners, if anyone is interested in spending a summer in Philadelphia, do have internship opportunities, and all of that can be found on the Urban Outfitters career site. Anthropologie is a brand of Urban Outfitters, Free People, Beholden, and Terrain. So it's a large company. Anthropologie does the visuals best, in my humble opinion, but those are all under the same umbrella company. So they have career opportunities there, paid and unpaid, all kinds of different things. I'm not sure how many they're still offering because COVID hit them hard too, but it's worth a look if you're interested. As far as working in the store level, it is really helpful if you're interested in a visual career with Anthropologie to get in as a part-time associate. and get to know the display coordinator in your store, get to know your manager, express interest in visual help. And there are a lot of projects that I do pass off to people who are in the fitting room, for example, when it's slow, or people who are up at the cash register when it's a slow evening. I'll give them little tasks that they can complete that ultimately go into helping out display. So that's pretty cool. And that's probably the best way to get into a position like this, is to get your foot in the door, have your name known, make a good professional impression upon your team, and you'll probably go far. We don't know like time limits, but there are opportunities to help out a lot in the visual field at Anthro. So that's a great way to get your foot in the door. These two images are interior displays from this past year. The one on the left is currently what we have up right now. We're about to start taking it down for holiday, but it was just such a fun installation. And those are leaves that have been dyed and sewed together to make these long tree-like strands. And we have a lot of gold leafing going on. The display was called Falling Leaves. So it was really supposed to be this elegant chandelier kind of thing, right when you walk into the front of the store. And then the one on the right, everybody has loved this one, and people want our displays so bad, but we're saving this one for future notice. But this was our spring display, and it was all about, you know, of course, blooms and like those rich colors that you'll see in the springtime. So those were two really impactful interior displays that I worked on this past year. And oh, here's our fall window from COVID fall. But this is an example of a great helper project. So I had to hand cut all of these leaves and then paint them. So we have like thousands and thousands of leaves. And we have two window spaces. This is our primary one. Our secondary one is much bigger, but this one is the one that's the most looked at by the company. So it's the one that we put the most effort into. So all of these leaves, while we were working during COVID, the store was mostly closed, but we would open for a few short hours a day. And it was, that was the only time that I was asked to be a customer service person, was during that time. But while we were doing that, we were all cutting these leaves out in the entire store. So it was a huge community effort. And then install happened a lot quicker when we have a lot of hands on deck. So that was a fun one to work on. I think my earpods are about to die. Hang on just a second. I'm just gonna turn on my audio. Actually, I don't know if I can. Oh boy, I think I'm drawing on your presentation, Marcy. I'm so sorry.
No, you're good. It's fine.
Is there a way? I wonder if I just take out if it'll return to normal audio. I'm gonna try it. Okay, can anybody hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
We can hear you. Yep.
All right, thank you guys. Sorry about that. I charged.
You're good.
Still not charged, of course. Okay, is there a way to get out of this slide? Let's see. Sorry, Marcy. There we go. Can you guys see the whole image?
I can. Can everyone else? I got a thumbs up.
Okay, good. I am like seeing part of an image, so it's cool. All right, so this was our spring window from this past spring. And it was actually the most printmakerly window that we've been able to do. This was a cyanotype that we did. This was kind of when we were still a little COVID, half working from home, half going into the studio. So this project was actually really great to do from home because I could use my backyard to expose these huge cyanotype prints. And that's another interest of mine. I've always loved photography and the intersection between that and printmaking. And I think cyanotype is one of those perfect mediums that is both, truly. So the back panel is a photograph, is a cyanotype. And then these three-dimensional flowers were made, another project where a lot of people helped out. The theme was Here Comes the Sun. So it was, again, like this past year and a half has been kind of depressing for a lot of people. So really, really a tough time. So they've been really pumping up the cheer on a lot of these windows. But this was a really fun one to make. And we do a lot of things that are floral, but I was happy to have a moment that, an element of printmaking, and like even the flowers that are around, like the little tiny petals that are around this composition, even those are stenciled. So this was the first window where I really felt like I was able to use the thing that I love. And it doesn't come around that often. I always learn something from each window that I make, but this one was kind of a special one, and it was just such a happy window. So we're storing these hydrangeas for future use, hopefully. So we'll see what happens in the future. We're trying to be more sustainable as a brand, which is good. And this is our other window. This was the holiday during COVID. So a very cheery, present window full of gifts, bright colors. Everything in the store was super bright. It was like very optimistic, which is a word that our corporate office likes to use a lot. But this, I had a helper making, I think we must have made 500 presents. I am not even kidding. It was nuts. And these are all hand painted. They're just cardboard boxes, but they're wrapped in paper. They're painted. They have stamps on some of them. And then the front window that we have had a mama bear. It was like they wanted to add animals for that extra of a whimsy kind of like layer to these holiday windows. So this is our side window, and I had these baby bears that were kind of playing in the snow, getting up to mischief. One is sleeping, one is climbing up the tree to light it. It was a really fun window to make. And all of those bears are made out of, let's see, the inside was like balls of paper and tape. And I built a sculpture that way. And then paper mache'd, and then the fur was strips of dyed fabric. And then they're wearing like a sweater or a scarf that I upcycled from old sweaters that I got from the thrift store. So there's still a lot of materials that are kind of unexpected in these windows, but this was a really fun one to make. And that stack of presents is like my dream. It's the perfect present stack. So this was a really fun, but very challenging window to execute. And then I think I might have one or two more slides. No, never mind. That was the last one. Okay, so yeah, we can definitely open up for questions. Marcy, I know you might have a couple, and students, I'm happy to answer whatever you guys want to hear more about.
Sure, if any students want to go with any questions.
Yeah, I have a question, please. So two questions. So when you work on these projects, is there an assigned place where you should be working? And yeah, this is my first question. My second question is that I understood that they come up with a concept, but do they also like ask you what materials to use, or they leave that to you?
Yeah, thank you for your question. Those are both probably the most asked about questions, and I'm very happy to answer them. So in the back of our store, every Anthropologie store has a shop in the back of the store, along with our like stock room that has all of the extra product in our office and things like that. So in the back hallway, we have this room, and that's where I keep my stuff. That's where I work. It's not the biggest room in the world, but I'm lucky here at North Park. I have a pretty good sized one. It's definitely big enough to fit a full sheet of lumber in, like a 4x8 sheet of lumber. So that's very important because we do a lot of cutting of wood back there. But I come into work every day and work in that shop. And I'm in charge of keeping it clean and
keeping it organized, which it's not right now because we are installing our holiday windows this week. So it is a total mess, and it always gets that way during a heavy install week because I'm just kind of trying to meet this deadline. But yeah, that's where I work every day. And my hours, this was one thing that threw me for a loop. I work Monday through Friday from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. So it is a very early job, and I am not necessarily a morning person, but I have had to, I think graduate school prepared me to be a morning person. And it helped me a lot to be able to come in and be productive at 6 o'clock. And I don't like getting up at 4:30 in the morning, but getting off at 3 is pretty sweet. So it's kind of a good trade-off. And it's also great. It's that way because there are no customers in the store for 4 hours. So we do a lot of things that are dirty. We're painting, we're cutting things, we're being messy, we're moving clothes around. And it's just best if customers don't see that inside part. So that we work in the back of the store, and I work crazy hours, but it's actually pretty beneficial when you consider what we have to do. As far as your second question, corporate comes up with the theme, they come and it matches the product, right? So it all has to deal with merchandising, trend forecasting, the buyers are in on it, which are all things that I don't really know much about, but I'm interested in that side of fashion and how far they have to project ahead of time. Like, oh, we're gonna have a sweater in 2 years that's gonna have a fox on it. So our fall windows are gonna have foxes. And so it all is like this really well-oiled machine, and that's been really kind of interesting to learn about. So they come up with the theme. They give us pretty specific instructions for each display. So like this one that we're looking at, for example, this was our fall installation from this past season. We just took it down this week. And all of these materials I had to purchase, but they sent us templates that corporate had made that were to scale so that we could project a scaled fox in the exact style that they wanted. They had already figured out that it needs to be this size, this kind of whimsical, this brand of like this silhouette exactly. So they sent us templates. We projected, cut all of these shapes out of wood that we purchased. And then all of them are treated with felt, dried leaves and pampas grass and yarn. There's stitching on there. So all of that I have a budget for. I have my own credit card for the store, and I go out and procure those materials and then make it happen. Sometimes like holiday seasons, corporate office sends us a lot of our supplies to try to expedite shipping. Of course, now COVID has severely messed with shipping lines. Yeah. So we've been getting a lot of our things late. So we just have to deal with it. We just have to roll with it. But things that they know that we'll use, like they'll send us bulk silver spray paint because we're going to be using gallons of spray paint and wow. Like yarn that they know that we're going to be using. They sent us, this year's holiday theme is called All Aglow. So everything is lit up, everything is glowing. It's a snow globe with like lit up houses. So they sent us like LED lights for that. They sent us specific kinds of foils that they had already tested out to make these embossed, like metallic looking bases to the snow globe that we're working on. So sometimes, you know, depending on the season, home office does a lot of work to try to prepare us. And their designs are specific, but it really is because we have to move pretty fast once we get what we're like needing. And that just ensures consistency across the company. And it ensures that people aren't wondering what materials to buy. They list it all out. It's exactly what to get. So it's pretty specific, but I think I like it that way.
That's amazing. So you would, I think, as I'm visioning it, you would like do sketches, show them, and like the pineapple. That's what made me ask you. I love do they give you a space to work, because that is very like it's a very big item to.
It is. It's a huge
to work on.
And I will tell you that on the right side, like as we're looking at this image, on the right side of the image is the door to get into this space. Mm-hmm. And it's only, it's like 20 inches wide. Yeah. Like it's very small. So part of my work is to figure out how to build things in half or like quadrants and figure out how to get them into that space.
That's amazing.
So it's really kind of a lot of engineering that is done on the fly a lot of times.
Yeah.
It's interesting. But yeah, we do submit sketches at the beginning of the season. I do mine digitally on an iPad with Procreate or Photoshop.
Mhm.
Not required, but I just find that it's faster for me to
Yeah.
do it that way. But a lot of people do hand-drawn sketches and they'll scan them in and send them off, but they get approved by the team. They'll send out, like, for this fruit window, they wanted us to do, they had fruits that were off the table and fruits that were on the table. So pineapple,
Wow.
kiwi, watermelon was a good one. I can't remember, but like no bananas, no cherries, you know, like they have to be very specific.
Mhm.
And then once they choose what they want, like, okay, if you're doing a pineapple, they'll post instructions for how they prototyped their pineapple. And then you can take that and move along with how you need to make yours. But all of the sketches have to be approved by several rounds of people before we could even start production. So it's a busy job for sure.
That's amazing. Yesterday, I was just attending. I'm an interior designer and I studied graphic design also before, and I worked in interior design for many years. But yesterday was the first time that I hear at IDSA, which is the Interior Design Student Alliance meeting, that there is something called EDG, which is, EGD, which is like 3D graphic design. Ooh. That they're implementing into spaces. So that reminded me a lot of, like, reflected on what that was done. So, and now when you said that you work in Photoshop, you show them. So this is basically what also you're doing without you knowing in these windows. Yeah. And if you ever need help volunteering, like I would volunteer with you and help a lot, because I worked a lot in this domain, and I don't leave an anthropology in any state except going inside it, except like especially Georgetown and DC and all of those. I love them. Yeah,
they are really fun.
If you need any help, anytime, just like, I'll send you my information. You can call me. Like, just being there also helping is just a thrill for me.
It's a dream. It's really fun. And especially it is. You know, and everybody has this energy of excitement. It's a fun thing to do. And we used to actually do customer workshops where we would have like an event and we would have like drinks and snacks, and people would come in and work to like make the last time we did it, I think it was a holiday a couple years ago. And then I think they stopped doing it because I don't know why they stopped doing it, but I'm hoping that they do that again, because that was a really fun time. And then customers get to know each other and employees are working alongside them. So it can be, I hope that they return back to that kind of thing.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That's exciting.
You had good ones.
There was a question in the chat from Andy. It says, great to hear you talk about this part of your creative process. Do you find that your job at Anthropologie affects your personal studio art practice?
Thank you, Andy. Hi, how are you? I saw your beard. You look great. Yeah, well, it affects my personal practice in a lot of ways. It gives me a lot of ideas for my own future, which is pretty great. I have a lot of tools tucked into my arsenal that I didn't necessarily expect to have. So I think that this job has prepared me for something like a public art project or something that's a bigger scale than making prints on a press, which is really exciting. So things like that are like more site-specific installations are becoming really interesting to me as an artist in my personal studio, because now I know how to make all of these structures and a lot of weird materials from Home Depot that you wouldn't otherwise think that you can transform into something that is beautiful. So it's given me a lot of ideas. However, the drawback to working in a creative field at least 40 hours a week is that I am exhausted when I get home. And that is one thing that I don't think is talked about at all. Having a personal practice basically means that I carve out time on the weekends sometimes, but this job is really physical, and it takes a lot of my energy and my brain space. So as far as making for myself is concerned, it's a little sporadic at this point, and I will be honest about that. And because of that, I think this job has a time limit. Like, it's not a forever career, partly because it takes a toll on your body, and you're on a ladder all the time, you're lifting heavy things, like it's very physical, which is great, but it makes me very, very tired. So I think that my goal for the next couple of years with the company is to transition hopefully into more of a managerial position where I'm guiding display practices, but I'm not necessarily the only one making them, because I think that will open up a little bit more mental freedom for me to make my own work and get back into a regular studio practice, because I have a lot of projects that are in progress. And when I book exhibitions, for example, that gives me the fire to get home and keep going. But spending all your creative energy at work does take a toll. So that's been something that I've struggled with for sure, leaving the academic world and moving into more of a corporate world, is that the focus is not on my own personal art right now. But I think I have some tricks up my sleeve, hopefully within the next couple of years, that deal with promotions and ways that I could move in this company that would free up some of that time and mental space. But yeah, that's a great question.
Looks like we have another question in the chat. What's the biggest thing you learned in college that you still use today?
Oh boy. I think, so many things. I think that being flexible is probably one of the things that I've cherished so much from that time. And it's been something that I think I've built upon my whole life. But in college, you're hit with a lot of things all at once. And sometimes it can be pretty panic inducing. But growing in that space and being willing to have determination to meet your deadlines, but also grace and compassion for yourself, that's the flexibility side. That's a hard thing to learn, but I think college teaches you so much more than like how to do a skill or how to like read a spreadsheet or whatever. Like, it's so much more than the classes that you take. So I learned a lot in my classes, but I think that I also learned a lot about myself professionally. And that's one of the things that I think is the most important about higher education. Like, yeah, the education comes first, but the things that you learn about your own self along the way are better, I think. So just learning how to regard deadlines, what that balance is, being graceful with yourself, and being flexible with when plans change. You can't, like with this job, for example, my world changes every other day. Like there's something new thrown in and I have to do it right then, or something broke and I have to fix it. Or, the plumber came into my room the other day, my shop, and like damaged one of my things that I had made. And I was so mad. But instead of letting those things get to me, because I have this like background of rigor and deadlines and flexibility, I know that I can handle it. So that sounds like maybe not the most academic answer, but I think that's the thing that helped me the most, was like the professional experience that I gained from going through all of those projects and hard times in college. So I hope that makes sense.
One more question, please. So you mentioned that you keep some of the installations and that some of them, you said some people ask for them. So do people buy some of the installations?
Great question. You're hitting all of the nails on the head about like what happens to our displays after we make them. Some things, unfortunately, are made to be really temporary. This pineapple, for example, looks really sturdy, but it's not. It's like all a facade. So it had to be, it was damaged coming out of the window. And that's just like, there was no way to save it because it's basically made out of cardboard. So that's always, sometimes it's just how it is. Probably half of what we make gets damaged because it's just not meant to last for a long time. But the things that are meant to last, and even parts of things, we do hold on to. We have a storage area here at North Park that holds a lot of our visual supplies like shelves and tables and stuff that we're not using. So we store a lot of the displays that we keep, that we make, that are in good condition there. And a lot of times the company will ask for us to reuse them. Every season when we start to deinstall the previous season, the company sends out a list of things that can be donated and a list of things that can be thrown away or kept. So right now we're trying to be more environmentally conscious and sustainable as a brand. So we're trying to keep as much as possible so that we can reuse parts of them for future displays, which I think is great. However, there are some things that we do make that are up for adoption, is what we call it. So what it is if you're ever in a store and you see something that you are interested in, ask a person that works there if they have a list for like display donation. And some stores will keep running lists, some stores do not. It just kind of depends on the management. We try to do it as much as we can, but like I said, we've been saving a lot, but you can always add your name and your email address is what I prefer onto this list and tell the person what you're interested in. It's helpful if you're specific, like if you say, I want that kiwi, instead of everything, because I'm probably not gonna email everybody everything all the time. So if you're like, I want one flower for my kid's bedroom, that's really helpful. And then I have a running tally of people who are interested in displays. So
that's
when the
amazing.
It is really cool. And I like to see them go a better life. But also we do a lot of donations to nonprofits, to charities, to like schools, libraries, things like that are in need of cool art and sculptures. If you're an individual, we ask for a donation, and that donation, we set the amount and it's made to a charity of that person's choice. There's like an approved list of art charities that the company supports. So you do buy it technically, but the money doesn't go to us. It goes to a philanthropic organization. So there's opportunities, but if you're ever in there and you see something you like, ask about it.
Yeah. And are there any, I'm sorry, I'm asking so many questions. Are there any like specific hours when you work, or that like you just work when you have to? I know that you're always stressed on time. It shows that because of the size of the work that you're doing. But like, would they tell you, come work on weekends, but like, or I don't know if this is something that is noisy to work with, especially when you have like to cut wood or stuff like that, or if it affects the store itself. I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of why we get there so early in the morning, so that we can do as much noisy, smelly stuff as possible before people start shopping. But my shop is not available to customers, so I can usually go back there and do whatever I need. And it's annoying to associates, but it's also just kind of how it is. It's just part of it.
Yeah.
So sometimes we do come in really early, like 5 a.m. has happened in the past. And that just gives us an extra hour before our customers get in. So if we're doing big furniture moves, or we're painting a lot of things on the sales floor, we'll take care of that during those early morning hours. But usually, I don't think I've never done an overnight thing, but sometimes I've heard that needs to happen depending on the scope of the project. But most of this stuff I build in pieces, and I do the best that I can to be clean and carry it out for its debut when it's time to do it. So it's always kind of a surprise when things get finished and they haven't been totally damaged and just sitting back in my studio for you know, a month or whatever.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your questions.
Do we have any other questions?
I'm not going to ask anymore because I can keep going until tomorrow.
Send me a message if you have anything and I'm happy to answer it.
Thank you. I was just like wondering that all of the time that we were learning, since like I've been studying since the late 80s at university, like studying design. So I come from Lebanon, and so I studied in Lebanon and Jordan, and I worked in Saudi Arabia for many years, and then I studied here. So all of the time that I've been studying and working, we've always like, how do you say it in English? Like the emphasis is always on the product, not on the background. So like the background has to be subtle and the product that you're displaying has to be in order for the product to show. But here I see that sometimes it's not that, sometimes it's equal in emphasis, but sometimes it's over dominating the product itself, which is like the pineapple, which this is the first time I see such a thing. All of the Anthropologie I've been to before stores, they're always like this, a little bit of the like the boho look.
Yep.
I mean, they're not a lot of color, natural wood and stuff like that. But this is the first time I see these, which are like really interesting and beautiful, and that it breaks all the rules that I have been studying before. Makes
Absolutely.
it beautiful. Mm-hmm.
That's a wonderful comment. And that's exactly what this window was supposed to be. It was supposed to be complementary. That's the thing that we always have to think about in terms of like the composition of a space that we're setting up, and not just in windows, but in the interior as well, because every season we're making an entire display package for every concept in the store. So we have to be really careful not to overactivate a space. And that's why sometimes a bigger item works better than a bunch of small items, because that can be very chaotic and busy and it's distracting from the product. And it kind of depends on, like summer, there's a lot of pattern, there's a lot of brightness. There were pineapple and fruit motifs that were included in a lot of our clothing and product. So this made sense as this like overwhelming, huge thing that's like really intricate on the inside. But sometimes it is better to have a more neutral display because your product is more neutral, or it's really bright. And so the idea that corporate has is to make sure that you're highlighting exactly what they want, because at the end of the day, the goal is to sell candles and dresses, you know? And that's kind of a funny little feudal thing, like, oh, you know, I make art so that people buy things, and they're happy to do it because of the art that's around it. So that's kind of an interesting perspective to take as an artist. Like, this is sometimes, well, it's meant to be secondary to the product, but it's interesting to see how it can evolve with each new concept that home office comes up with. It's always a challenge, I will say that.
And it's very inviting to the store. Like, it's, I think like the rule, like now I discovered that the rule might be broken, it should be broken, is that this draws attention to the store more than the dress or the pants or the necklace or whatever. Like, this is something that all stores maybe should be implementing.
Absolutely. I think it really does it best. I mean, it's always been one of my favorite places to go because of this reason. Like, you look at this window because there's a giant pineapple in it, but then hopefully you notice the dress and the jacket and the blah, blah, blah. So it's creating this whole environment, and that's been really interesting to learn about that specific feeling that you are trying to convey.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was going to ask if you style the mannequins as well.
Oh, that's a great question. No, I do not. So I work in partnership with my counterpart is the visual merchandising manager, which is another fabulous path in this company and in most retail companies. So the two of us are the ones that come in from 6 to 3 every day. And she is in charge of getting all of the product that we've received in its respective home. And those ideas change monthly and seasonally as well. So she's always very busy too. But she's out on the floor merchandising and styling, and that is her job. And my side is the display aspect. And the partnership that we share is really special. It's very collaborative and it's very critical. So it's, there's different brands of people and sometimes you just don't jive with another person. But I've always found that, building up this professional relationship and being honest with each other is really important. And so, she's really hard on herself. I'm really hard on myself. We all have high standards for ourselves and the other. And it's nice to be on the same page with a partner. She's technically my boss, but we work so closely that it really is a partnership. So she's in charge of that, of the direction that we're taking a specific display, if it's a little bit different or, what our specific space needs. But she does all of the styling and it's always a really pretty fun collaboration.
Well, speaking of collaboration, I don't know if you addressed this question earlier, but I was wondering if you have maybe some employees under you that help you kind of, make all of these. I know you said like some of the associates kind of help too, but do you have like any people that are kind of under you to help you, make these installations?
Another great question. So this is something that I hope we'll get back to in the future because we really do need support in the visual side. They used to have a position called the visual specialist assistant. It was called the VSA. And that position no longer exists due to COVID. They got rid of it to cut costs. So what we do now is I have a person that I have vetted and I trust their craft and I'm mentoring them and training them. They are a sales associate and they have to do like half of their shift on the floor. And then if those tasks have been completed on the sales floor, then they can come back and work with me for the rest of the day. And they're not full-time, but they're working like maybe 30 hours a week during the same times that I'm working, not at 6 a.m., but like 8 to 4 is her shift right now. So I think every store tries to find an associate that is creatively minded and has really good craft and is very positive and all those good things that the display coordinator can trust with small tasks and even big tasks, depending on how you grow and if you're interested in doing certain things or learning certain things. And it's not a true position, but I think every store has one person or more that they flex in and out of display. It's not a permanent thing, and I hope that they'll bring it back, when we maybe regain a little bit more of our financial stability as a brand, as COVID hopefully continues to go away. But that is a really great position. So that's what I was saying before. If you're interested in helping, the best thing to do is apply as a part-time associate if you can. Get your foot in the door, become friends with the DC, that's me, and express your interest in specific projects, or like if you're really good at embroidery, maybe there's a project that we're doing and you could say, oh, I could help you with this if you're interested. And then I go to my manager and say, hey, I want this person. So that's how it's always worked for me. It's not as much help as I need. I need a full-time person to help me, but it's a start. So I hope that we'll get back into more of a title for that. But right now that's how we're rolling.
Excellent. Oh, I have one more question. Have you ever received constructive criticism or feedback from corporate? And if so, how do you kind of digest that and work through it?
100%. We are very communicative with corporate. So they have their own team of people, and then there's like a whole hierarchy of people underneath those people to ensure that our displays specifically are excellent. And sometimes that's not what you want to hear, that your display is not excellent. And the sad part is they're usually right. So backing off of your own artistic, like the thing where you want to own everything that you make because you made it, you really have to back off of that and do what they want. And that can be really tough. It's kind of what I was speaking to earlier. When you get that feedback, you might be too close to it to see what they see. They're thinking of it from a very global perspective. They're thinking of how your store stacks up with the other hundreds and thousands of stores that we have display-wise, and they want everyone to be perfect. So I think sometimes feelings can get hurt. I've definitely had some moments where my feelings have been a little crushed because I might have strayed a little too far from like the vision that they were anticipating. And then by the time it gets up in the window, you know, it takes a week or two to install some of these things, especially if they're very like hands-on in the space. And sometimes you have put so much energy and like, you know, you've been prepping this project for 3 months and it's like, you've done everything right, so you think, and then it gets in the window and the color sucks, or it starts falling apart, or like you can see that you didn't cut something straight, or hot glue is all over the place. Like there's so many problems that you can see from the light of day when something goes into like your gallery, I guess, that you don't see in your own studio. And those are the things that always get you. So in my time here, I've learned to collaborate super hard with my visual manager, and we are great partners because we try to catch each other before those things happen because of the experience that we have. However, there have been some times in the past when I've completely put something up, thought I was finished, it looked just like my sketch, everything looks right, and then 3 days later, I get a response from corporate that says this is not up to our standards, it needs to be redone, take it down, start over, or fix this, or do that. And it's like, it's so defeating, you know, but part of that flexibility that I was talking about is you just have to, you know, hold your rage. It's what they want, you work for them, it's their money, it's their company. So you have to be professional, take it, think about it, and then usually when it goes back up after you've redone it, even if you don't want to, it's usually way better. So going through that, I've gone through that like pretty serious feedback a couple of times, and it's never fun. You know, it's never what we want to hear, but it makes it better. And I learn something from it every time. So I think you just have to remind yourself that you are not your art. Like you are making this for a purpose. And if it's not fulfilling the purpose, then it's not right. So there is some perfectionist tendency in that like culture of criticism, but they are honestly always trying to make it the best thing that it can be for everybody who walks through the doors. So I think when you're too close to it, it can be difficult, but when you step back and you really think about that global perspective, it makes a lot of sense. And they're usually always right. So that's a big hump that we all have to learn at some point in our life, right?
Right. It kind of goes back to our critique days, I'm sure, and
yes,
receiving that feedback and working on that and progressing. Yeah.
Worked on it for 2 weeks and you're mortified that it doesn't come across the way that you intended. But that's part of being an artist, and I think it's a muscle that we have to continually strengthen to stay relevant, to stay strong, and to have fun overall. You know, like the better you get strengthening that muscle, the easier and the more fun it'll be.
Yes, absolutely.
I have a question, please. So what about all the other branches? So do all the branches have to follow the same concept, or and every designer at each branch has a different like way of putting this together?
Great question. It is pretty pretty similar across the board. So like all anthropologies get the same, mostly the same clothing, the same product, and then all anthropologies get the choice, like same theme, but the choice of a couple of different styles of display depending on your space. So my windows have a wall that back them, which means that I can make a backdrop. Some store windows do not have a wall, and you look right, it's just glass and you look right into the store. So corporate tries to take into account those different scenarios, and they try to make a prototype option of the same theme for stores with different architecture. Some stores are 2-story, some stores are in an office building. Like there's all these different kinds of physical footprints, and they try to take that into account when they do their planning. But we are following the same theme, and if they're sending us supplies from corporate, we all get the same supplies. So you kind of have to follow the same theme. So every anthropology has the same thing across the board, and they want that consistency as a brand. But I will say, I mentioned earlier that Urban Outfitters, Free People, Beholden, Terrain, those are all parts of the company too. So they have a completely different set of rules. I know Urban Outfitters also has a display artist position. I believe it's a traveling position depending on the city, where there's one person that goes around to all of the stores. And it's a lot of building. It's a lot of, it's probably some merchandising too. It's kind of like a split job, but their mission is totally different. Free People is totally different, but they also have displays. And I think that the visual manager does that package. So all anthropologies are pretty consistent, or they try to be, but as the other brands that are within Urban Outfitters as a whole they all have different paths that they take as well.
Do you feel that the pay that you're getting is compensates for all of that, or not a lot?
I think the starting pay that they post on the job site is, for like Texas, is too low. I think that it is livable, but I think that it is on there. It's higher than minimum wage, of course, but it's a really skilled position. So I think depending on your skill set, you can negotiate higher, and they expect you to negotiate higher. It's an hourly position, so we rarely get overtime, but we do get paid days off, we get paid vacation, all health insurance, all that stuff, which is great. I started off at the store in Southlake, Texas, and that's a smaller store with a smaller sales volume. So the pay at smaller stores is going to be less than the pay at North Park, for example, because it's such a big store. So I would, if you're thinking about applying for a position like this or any other, I would seriously consider negotiating up your pay when you start, because as long as as it's been my experience that as long as you're in that position, there's no opportunity for a raise until you move up, until you get a promotion. So North Park was my promotion. And in that, I got a sizable promotion that I fought for. And I knew that it would need to happen because of the amount of additional projects that I would have to work on and just the skill set that I've developed over the years. But I think that it's different in every state, but in Texas, the last time I checked, the starting pay for a display coordinator, I would negotiate higher than that if you plan to get in.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you for your questions.
That was a great question.
That is a really good question. It's something that no one wants to talk about, you know?
Right. Everybody kind of shies away from the pay aspect, but very helpful to know.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions? Any other questions? There's something in the chat. It's not a question. It's just a kudos, but I'm going to read it. I don't have a question, but it surprised me a lot that you make these beautiful displays, because I'm a printmaking student at UNT and I never imagined I could do something like this. It's amazing.
Oh, thank you so much.
That's really awesome.
Well, and to be honest, I never thought that I could either, really. Like even when I interviewed for the job, you know, there's a certain amount of not lying, but pumping yourself up, right? When you
confidence.
Yes, absolutely. And so when they asked, are you confident with power tools? I said, yes, of course. Now it had been like, I don't know, a long time since I had used like a chop saw. I was not in the sculpture shop. I was not a builder. I did not know how to make furniture. There was a lot of YouTubing. There was a lot of, like, I didn't know how to use a sewing machine, but I said I did. So there's a lot of like things that, you know that they're in your wheelhouse. You just haven't dedicated time to learn them yet. And I think that could be the difference between you getting the job and not getting the job. So if a white lie is I'm not trying to condone lying, but I did fudge my skill set. Like, yeah, I know how to use that. Of course, I use drills all the time. Really didn't. I really didn't. But it's something that I practiced and took some time outside of work to make sure that I would like understand how to set up this like circular saw in my room that's very small, that I have to build this like kind of weird jig in order to cut a straight line. Like there's all these things that you learn on the job. And what's cool about this job is that we have a great support community. So we have like district group texts between all of the display coordinators. If we're struggling with something, there's never really a time when you should be feeling bad about yourself or feeling like you don't know enough, because you can always reach out to your support system. And that's something that the company, they don't require it. It just kind of happens because we're all creatives working in this challenging job. So we're always texting back and forth about like, hey, did you guys follow the instructions for this? Did you order this? Has your material arrived yet? How are you guys doing this? It's a really cool collaborative experience, and we all struggle sometimes. And I think YouTube is there to help. Like educational programs, anything that can teach you something is there to help. And I definitely did my fair share of looking up YouTube on my break and talking to others in my position, because we don't all know everything, all the time. We have to learn it sometime. But I didn't think I could make these either. And sometimes I still don't. Like at the beginning of every season, I look at the picture of the completed display that they send as an example, and I say, there's no way. There's no way. Still, after 4 years, I think there's absolutely no way this is going to happen. And every time it happens, and you just take it one step at a time, and it's amazing what you can make and the impact that your art has on other people. So that's the thing that keeps me going, even if I get really bad feedback, or if like something breaks and it's like devastating. Like in those times, it's hard to remember the good parts of the job, but it is really exciting when you step back from something and you say, dang, I made every single piece of that by myself, like with my hands. That's really rewarding. So it's definitely, it's challenging, and it's difficult, and it's fun, and it's all of the things pretty much.
By the way, how much time does the display stay for?
Good question. They range. So like, it depends on how complicated the display is. For holiday, we start getting direction about the themes. Like we'll get pictures, but no instructions yet, just like an overview of what they're planning, I think mid-August. And then late October is when it starts to go up. So we have 2 months beforehand. When fall is completed, we're moving into holiday prep. We're usually working a season in advance. So we always start with windows. They always start at least 2 months earlier than the install date. And then depending on the scope of the project, sometimes you have to make something and set it aside, store it somewhere safe, where a plumber can't reach you, who's gonna destroy it. But sometimes you have to make something, set it aside, and get to work on your next project, because there's not going to be time later to do all of that intricate work. So right now I have, as I'm speaking, I have my helper person that works my same shift. She's in my shop working on making giant pine needles. And we're always going. So like holiday is the biggest season. It's the most bright, crazy, over the top, like full display season ever. The other seasons, you probably about a month for each window, and then I'd say 2 weeks of prep time before installation for interior displays, sometimes longer if they're really intricate. But it depends on the scope of the project. So it's always funny to be in November and you're thinking about spring and you're starting to like but you have to have time to make it. So that's why we start so early.
So how much time does it? I'm so sorry, Marcy.
Oh no, you're good. I was just going to ask, like, when will be your next window unveiling? Because I would really like to come by and see it.
Please, yeah. Preferably between 6 and 3, Monday through Friday, if you can, because I'll be there and I'd love to see you.
Oh, but, yes, yay!
I'll be there, Marcy. Yeah, you want me to pass by you?
So I'm working on my window for holiday right now. I'm behind because of some trips that I was taking for work and for vacation. So they're supposed to be due today. That's not going to happen, and it's okay. But I project the completed front window to be done by the end of next week. It's going to kind of be in a halfway state over the weekend, which is not usually how I like to leave things, but there's really not any other option. So this has been a pretty intense window. It's a snow globe, and it's
wow,
and everything is lit up, and it's very cool. So don't come yet, but maybe come at the next weekend, or even the weekend after would be better, because then I'll have time to really wrap up the side window.
Okay.
So
perfect.
If you want to see the entire store finished, it's probably not going to be until, we'll be working on holiday until Black Friday, pretty much.
Okay.
But after that, it'll be fully set, and then we'll start working on spring.
Okay.
So if you want to see,
maybe even sometime in December.
December is good if you come before Christmas. At the week after Christmas, we start taking everything down.
Okay.
So gotcha. Yeah, come when it's in its full glory. Yeah.
Okay. Will do. Noted.
Awesome.
So I know that it depends on the season. Like, let's say Christmas season, the window has to the display stays in the window all that time. But what about summer, longer seasons? Do you change it twice and 3 times, or only it stays only
the windows every season, once a season? So
once a season.
The clothing changes usually every 2 weeks to reflect new product, but we install our windows maybe about a month before the actual season hits. Like right now we're installing before Halloween, but they'll usually stay up for about 3 months and then come down. So we do 4 windows a year and 4 sets of interior displays a year. And sometimes we have displays that are a little more permanent on the inside. But windows are definitely 4 a year, and they pretty much stay up for the same amount of time each.
Thank you.
Awesome.
By the way, I've visited so many countries around the world, but this is one of the nicest displays. These are one of the nicest displays I've ever seen, really. I'm so proud of you.
That's very Thank you.
That's amazing. You're doing amazing work.
We hope that you feel inspired when you see them. So that's really good.
Thank you so much.
Yes, very inspiring, Jessie.
Thank you.
Do we have any last questions? Looks like we're 5 minutes from the end.
It was I don't know if I can talk for an hour and a half, but
it was really easy. It was really easy because it was just so interesting. Everybody loves your work, Jessie. You're doing such an amazing job. And I thank you so much for being in our session today. If you have any questions about the session, please let me know. We will be posting the recorded session to the CVAD website under Career Roundtable. So you can access that at any time, but just give us about 2 weeks for editing and we'll have that posted. But are there any last thoughts or questions before we let Jessie go? All right, I guess not. So we'll let you get back to work. And Jesse, you're doing an amazing job again. And thank you so much for being a part of the Career Roundtable today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was my pleasure.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone.